This time on shift points, for every 2 parts that we put back on this 1964 Galaxie, we take probably at least 2 more back off. Thanks for joining us. Back working on the 64 Galaxie. This time, got a couple things I want to kind of get knocked out this time. First, starting with this generator. So we were able to make a decision on what to do about the generator, and what we're going to do is get rid of it. Get rid of that generator. We're going to swap this car over to an alternator. The main reason I was able to make this decision, honestly, kind of easily, was this kit from eBay. Looked at it online. I'll put up a link to this, what this is, in the description of this video. But this bracket right here will allow us to get rid of that generator and convert this thing over to an alternator. These two ends right here is the perfect fit for a G1 or a G3, 1G or 3G alternator, Ford alternator. And we can swap this thing over to a 1-wire Ford alternator. This kit comes with all the bolts that you need to do that. The only thing you have to do is, first off, get rid of the generator, of course, pull the brackets off of this, and the other thing you have to do is swap out the water pump. So you can see on the 64 water pump, there's a bolt here, and then there's like a dowel pin right here, and that's what locates this bracket here. So what we had to do is pull all this stuff off, get rid of it, and then swap this water pump from the 64 water pump to a 63 water pump. Excuse me, to a 65 water pump. The 65 water pump gets rid of, it has this bolt here, it gets rid of this dowel, and it replaces with this triangulated bolt pattern of bosses that's on that water pump. And that's what this bracket right here is for. That will bolt onto the water pump like this and have the alternator mounted just down there where in the same place the generator is now. But we'll get the nice new performance of this generator, or excuse me, of the alternator, which we are fortunate enough to be able to get from Southwest Performance Parts. They have a 1G Ford alternator, and it's going to fit right into this application just perfectly. They've got that on the way for us. We're going to get it bolted up into this when it gets here. But first thing we've got to do is drop this generator, drop the water pump. I've already drained everything out of it. You guys saw that last time. Got the hoses off, got those on order also. Had to special order the top hose, but the bottom hose was available. But we haven't got it yet. Actually, I think it's the other way around. We had to order the bottom hose, but they had the top hose in stock in Asheville. But that's all on the way, and it'll be here later this week. But until then, I'm going to go ahead and get all this stuff off of here and out of here, and that'll be kind of get us ready to start bolting all this stuff back on once those parts get here. Got this generator off. Look at this thing. It's a monster, much like the starter. It weighs an absolute ton. I'd say that's a good 8 pounds, maybe 10 pounds. It's very heavy. Got that pulled off. I'd opened up all this space down here. What I was able to do was get under there. The tension side of this bracket is down here. Got under the car, loosened that, took that bolt out, took these 2 bolts out here, and was actually able to bring this forward and up through here to get that out. So I didn't have to pull it out from the bottom or anything, which is good because there's a big heat shield here. It would make it basically impossible. So that was pretty much the only way to do it, was up through here and getting that cleared out. Now I'm going to take these brackets off. I'm going to go ahead and get these out of the way and then start working on this water pump. So I have to pull the fan off of it first. So yeah, so we'll start working our way through that stuff. I'm definitely going to call this a pretty successful little go at it this evening. Got all that generator bracket off, got the full water pump pulled off, and went ahead and pulled the fuel pump off. Don't know if I told you guys yet or not, we got one of those on order also. Another Carter. That's just actually what was on it. It was a Carter. Don't know if that was a stock fuel pump, if that was the original one. I'm not sure. Got it pulled off also. So all this stuff is here and kind of ready to be go back in the other direction. I'm going to take and clean all this really good too, because there's a lot of, you can see up here, kind of a lot of crud and stuff up here on the timing cover and all of that. Go ahead and get this wiped off a little bit, but now we've got everything on the front of the engine that's going to end up getting replaced water pump, fuel pump, and going to put the alternator on. All that's getting replaced, going to go on here, and then that's going to get us ready and kind of have as many of the problems as we could foresee about this engine potentially having. Trying to take care of all that as much as possible. I'd like to, when we get this thing out of here and going, to just get it to where it's drivable like the 55 truck that we have. Once we worked on it for so long to kind of get it there, we want to just get it to where we can drive it, which Dad has been, by the way. For any that's been following us since before the Galaxie, he's been driving the heck out of that truck lately, taking it up to Asheville and different stuff like that. I want this car to be the same way. So we're trying to kind of get ahead of anything that we think could be an issue. And then getting this old stuff taken off the front of this engine was a big part of that, and got a lot of work done today. And I'm really glad about this water pump. You can see, it's just old, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of this stuff has probably been on here for who knows how long. So it's not going to hurt anything to have it. Relatively inexpensive. I think a water pump's going to be like $75 from the Napa store, alternator, things like that. All stuff that's not crazy expensive. But can make all the difference in making this car really reliable, or just having to constantly down it to get it fixed. The plan is to pull the rear axles and to pull the center section, or at least get it pulled out enough to where we can start draining the grease. I told you guys we need to go through this rear end, probably check at least the seals. Probably we have to check all the bearings and stuff like that. Probably needs all that, but we need to pull it apart, just give it a check on it and see what we need. So Dad is pulling these axles out. There's a hole there in the axle, and there's four nuts that you have to take loose. So you can see that there. And if we look through there, you can see that if you take those loose, then we've got the slide hammer here that he's going to attach to the lug studs and some of the old lug nuts here and here. Put 3 of these on there.
Turn them over to flat sides.
Gotcha. Just like that. This slide hammer is actually a homemade piece that my papa made a long time ago. Made that with a torch and a file. We were laughing about it, kind of how.
I had a Ford truck.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And he had that when he was 16, so 18 or whatever. But anyway, yeah, that's a homemade piece, still used today. Pretty cool. There you go. Dad said he was extremely surprised that these came out as easily as they did, and he's had to really hammer on some of these before to get them out. And this one took a little bit more than the other side, but in general, just basically came right out. So that's a success. Pull the drive shaft out, 2 U-bolts here, 4 nuts, pull that out. Now I spray some Gibbs penetrating oil on this. I'm going to go ahead and take some of these out and take all but the top 2 out. I'm going to loosen those top two and see if I can get this out enough to let the grease start draining into my drain pan here. So go ahead and finish taking these off. I've already got the bottom 2 off. Get those off, loosen, and then go from there. Okay, plan B. This thing is very well in here. We even took a jack. I don't know if you guys can see it. Took a jack and tried to jack this up. Trying to lever this out to get this out. It is in there. It's not leaking any. It wasn't really making any noise, even though we haven't driven it. Nothing that we're aware of, at least. So we're gonna put the nuts back on this thing, bolt it back up, call it a day. There is a fill hole back here, and Dad's got a suction tool that we can use to pull the old grease out of this to change it. So we can use that, pull the old grease out, and then put some new grease in it and save ourselves pulling this center section, which is, like I said, firmly in place. Well, I'm going to take you over here to the Galaxie and show you something. There's a few parts missing that were there the last time you guys looked under the hood of this thing. And that is the radiator and this surge tank that was mounted right here. The more I worked on this and the more I looked at it, the more kind of worried about it I got. We're about to, we're about to put new water pump. We're about to do all this stuff. We're going to put a bunch of new coolant in it. This thing's going to be in basically the best shape that it's been in a long time. And I was going to run it through this old radiator and through that surge tank. And if you come over here and kind of look at it on the sides of it and stuff, now some people probably laugh at me, just kind of seeing this stuff. And on the surge tank, there's a lot of corrosion and stuff like that. I was just a little nervous, and I hated to get this thing running, and the first thing that goes is that radiator, which looks to be the stock radiator. It's been there a while. So what I'm going to do is two things. I'm going to reach out to Champion Radiators at that Leadfoot Racing, same place we got the radiator for the 66 truck that you guys saw. I'm going to get a new surge tank. They make a new aluminum surge tank for this. It's going to bolt right back here in place. And they make a really nice new drop-in place radiator for this thing, all aluminum. And the cool thing is it's going to come with a fan shroud. It's going to come with an electric fan as well. We're going to go ahead and get rid of that mechanical fan. That thing's a big parasite on this engine. Going to get rid of that electric fan, we're going to get rid of that mechanical fan. We're going to throw an electric fan on this thing. So we're going to solve 3 problems in one swoop. The good thing is, how I kind of justified this was, since we didn't take the rear end apart, we didn't have to put any bearings or anything like there. I'm going to take that money that I already had kind of allotted for that. We're going to put it toward this. So I am going to reach out to them probably later today, get a new radiator, surge tank, fans on the way, fan shroud, all that stuff. We're going to, Dad guesses probably 20 or 30 horsepower off of that fan. I could see it. That wouldn't surprise me. So that's a lot of draw on that. That's going to help this engine, just help it breathe an easier life than it has before. It really hurt my feelings to put this water pump and have drained this and made the absolute mess that I made in the floor, and have to go through all that again just because I was too cheap to go ahead and stick a radiator in this thing while we had it apart. So I had to get that out of my head, and I'm going to get it ordered. And like I said, we'll get this thing put in place. The other thing is, with all this out, the surge tank and everything, it really opens up everything a whole bunch. And it lets us, what I plan to do is kind of go ahead and get ready to get all of the wiring for the distributor from Southwest Performance Parts. We're going to get that wired up, get it in place. I'll probably go ahead and throw the water pump on and do all of that stuff, do all the stuff that we're going to do on the front of the engine while it's completely open here, and I've got really good, easy access to it. So I wanted to give you that update. Didn't really work on this thing a ton today, but while I wasn't here, I made that decision and said, this is what we're going to do. And so that I wouldn't back out, I went ahead and pulled them out. I wanted to show you guys the reason that we had to go from the 64 to the 65 style water pump. But here it is. This is the water pump. They actually had this pump in store at Napa. It was literally back there with like this much dust on the top of the box. So that was pretty cool that they had this. Ford probably used this for like every make and model for like 40 years, which is probably why it was there. But I got this painted, got all that ready to go. So this thing's about ready to go back on. But right here is the reason why we had to go to the 65 water pump. This will bolt right back on. It'll accept everything exactly how it was, but it has these 3 provisions in it that are threaded for these 3 bolts that came with this kit with this bracket. This bracket will accept the 1G and 3G style alternators, and this kit is really nice. It has the 2 short bolts that go in here and here, but then here they also provide this coated spacer that goes in there, gets this spaced up where it's supposed to be, and a longer bolt to go there as well. So we put a little Loctite on those, the blue medium strength Loctite. I went back up to the Napa store because the fitting that was on the old water pump was absolutely ruined. Got a nice new brass fitting to put on here that accepts the 5/8 hose for the heater hoses. and we are ready. I've already got my RTV here ready to go. I'm ready to put this thing back on, new gaskets and all that came with it. But this right here is what's going to eliminate those other brackets that were there and let us hang an alternator on this thing instead of that old worn out generator. Went over here, got this thing put in place. Looks really nice. We got all this. There's the 4 bolts. Just a reminder to anybody who's doing this, these are through into water. So we did put RTV on the bolts on all 4 of them. Make sure that those seal up good. There is this bypass hose up here also. I've got some clamps up there. We had to cut them off a little bit because all the ones we had were too long. Cut those off. Going to put those back on here in a minute. But yeah, man, this looks really good. This should work exactly how it's supposed to. Like I said, that fitting there will let us we'll run over to our heater hose, and that bracket's going to get us our alternator. It is a little close to the shield, but I mean, that doesn't matter. I mean, that's not going to move at all. So the alternator will go in here, and then the one side that this will be where we adjust it so that we can get tension in the belt. The alternator does sit on the back side of this, and it's supposedly, as long as everything goes like we're supposed to, it should have, this belt should drive all this. All the spacing should be right. Shouldn't have to do anything with that either, which would be really good. I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and throw the fuel pump on this thing, have that done, because that'll at least get everything that's open other than up here where the surge tank is. That'll have everything closed off, which would be nice to have. So I'm going to go ahead and put this fuel pump on next. Like when we put the distributor in this thing, also when I'm putting this fuel pump in, a good healthy layer of that Molly engine assembly stuff on there. This thing does ride against the cam, so again, just to make sure that everything is lubricated up on initial startup and all that good stuff, put that on there. It helps. Got some RTV on both sides of the gasket of this thing, and just in case, some RTV on these, just in case those go into some sort of oil or anything. So get this fuel pump thrown on now. Alright, got the fuel pump put on here. That's all good here. This fitting I did have to put in after the fact, that brass fitting. It came with it, but I put it in, and it does fit the fuel line that was here. I've already pulled it off though. We're going to have to pull the carburetor off. Dad's going to have to change the accelerator pump. We know that that's leaking for sure. We're also going to eliminate this heated spacer. So there's a spacer under this carburetor where the water coolant comes through, heats this up. It was to help with eliminating any fuel frosting during cold driving. This thing's not going to really be driven in the cold pretty much ever. So we're going to just take this spacer off. I've got another spacer on the way to replace this. So go ahead and we'll get this off. Take off this hose. This is the last piece of hose that I haven't pulled off of this thing really. So we're going to take that off, take that spacer off, take carburetor off, of course, and then we'll run the heater hose from this fitting to the heater core instead of having it routed through this and coming off the back. And back there is where that fitting was. That's so junky anyway. So we're going to pull all this stuff off, which needs to happen. Went ahead and got the carburetor pulled off. We are kind of discussing a plan for that. Yeah, we'll see. The idea potentially is that 750 that I found on Facebook a while ago, that Holly, we might just put that thing on here. Just because I have it already, I would rather do that than to, like Dad said, put anything into that carburetor over there. So might stick that one back, look at putting the 750 on this thing. It would definitely help it. I mean, it's not going to hurt anything for sure. And then whenever we do end up building the engine for my truck and we end up working on the truck ways down the road from now, we'll pull that brawler that we have off and put it on this and put that 750 on the truck. So we'll play a little carburetor swap there. So I think that's most likely what we're going to do. And I think that will be, I think that's going to probably be the smart play there. But I got that off, pulled off, got it out of the way, got that spacer off. Show you guys that real quick. Here it is, and you can see it has the inlet here, which has been leaking like crazy, and then it runs, you can see the boss in there that runs this direction around the plate and then exits that way. So it was definitely heating the whole thing. Kind of, I don't know, it's kind of interesting, but just not useful for me at all, and just, yeah, it's not for me. So anyway, so I got that pulled off, all that's off. Seems like every day I'm ended up, anytime I put 2 or 3 things back on, I pull 2 or 3 more off. But so that's all good. I think we're gonna call it good for today. And I had some parts come in that I didn't realize were coming in today, so I've been kind of tinkering with this a little bit. And the main thing is, we've talked about, I've got that Spectre spacer on this thing. It's a 1-inch spacer, which is exactly the same thickness of the one we took off of it. I threw the Holley 750 that I've got on this. And then the problem that I showed you guys the other day was clearing the air cleaner and this HEI distributor. You can see that there wasn't a whole lot of room here, but I found some Spectre spacers, and basically there's 3 spacers that'll give you 1 3/4 of a 1 3/4 of an inch of space on this that lets all this still seat how it's supposed to, and that gives us what I think is probably going to be just about perfect for clearance on this cap with the plug wire. I had some spare plug wires over there and took one of the ends and just stuck on here just to gauge it, and it looks like we've got enough clearance here to do what we need to do. This is number 5, which on this motor will be right here, so this can come straight out, run over, and then run down here to number 5. And this is number 4, which is going to go back that direction, back there. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. So that's going to go back toward the back of the engine, but it's going to go straight out here, go into that clip over here on the valve covers, and that'll run back to number 4. So I think that's going to work how we want it to. And the good thing is, when I closed the hood, because I had the radiator out, I was able to look through the grill and check the clearance on everything, and it looks like we've got about probably a half or more of an inch of clearance between the top of the air cleaner and the hood itself. I went ahead and pulled out all this old insulation that was in here. One section was basically already gone. I got the other 2 pulled out, and when I did that, that gave us a bunch of extra room, made sure that this wasn't laying right against it, and so all that was really good. So now I think that's how that's going to go. We'll put a threaded rod into the top of the carburetor so that we can bolt all this down and cinch it down. So then we've got to figure out fuel lines now. I've got to put fuel lines on the carburetor. We've got to get a new fuel line to go down to the fuel pump. So there's a little bit more work that we have to do as far as that goes. But in general, this does seem to have solved this without having to get a new air cleaner. I liked the idea of having this air cleaner because it did go with the engine. It matches the valve covers. It kind of, if you just open the hood, it wouldn't be like instantly realize that you had done a bunch of different stuff. You know how I am as far as I like things to just kind of somewhat appear original, but to be better and newer. So that I think would be, if you open the hood, unless you start, once you start looking, of course it's going to be pretty obvious with the HEI distributor. But it'd be kind of cool for this to at least be, when you initially open the hood, to think that everything was basically how it was from the factory. But we've definitely got some stuff in here that's making everything way, way better. So that's what I've been tinkering on. I'm not sure what I'm going to get done after this. But like I said, a little bit of effort here, but I think everything's going to work out exactly how I want it to here. So I went ahead and got the rest of the stuff back off of the rear end of this so we can start putting the disc brakes back on. Was really easy. Didn't realize how easy it was. Let me show you guys. Basically all I had to do was disconnect this brake line here from the back of the wheel cylinder there, and then that was it. Disconnect that, unhook the emergency brake cable, because we have new ones like that right there, and take a dead blow and not ease this off, backing plate and the wheel cylinder and everything. The reason that one's laying there is because I initially thought I had to take them off. So on this side I did take them off, but on the other side I didn't. So take this and knock that backing plate off, get all that whole assembly out of the way, and that's it. Now we can start looking at, we'll clean this up good. We can start looking at what brackets we need. I think they send multiple different styles of brackets depending on what you're working on. So we're going to go through those, see which one we need for this one in particular, and then that's it. We'll just start going back in the other direction. So I would have probably done this sooner if I'd realized how straightforward it was, to be honest with you. But that has that all off. We're ready to go the other direction. The only other thing I need to do is pull the lever off of the brake pedal, the one that sticks through the firewall that was going into the old master cylinder, so that we can get ready to put all of that stuff back on the firewall. I'm going to stick with that plan for the first time forever. I'll actually stick with that plan. I got this stuff off. Next thing we're going to do is get that stuff ready, get the brake booster and the master cylinder and everything mounted on the firewall, and then we can start working on pulling old brake lines and then bolting all this stuff back here on and have all that done. So that's kind of what I've got right now. I think that's what I'm going to stick with for now. I'm going to hop in the car, pull that lever off, and that'll have that much done. Little moment of truth here. The headers finally came. I pulled the brake lines off this thing, got all the fuel line, got all that stuff taken care of. That's all out of the way. Now it's all piled back here. Right now we have the headers that have come in, and like I said, it's a little bit of a moment of truth. I've been a little worried about this, even though they say they're supposed to fit these cars. It seems like anymore nowadays, you never know. So I did get the coated ones, so these are coated. We don't have to mess with it. We don't have to worry about any sort of paint or anything like that. That makes me very happy. Dad's getting them unwrapped right now. You can hear it here in the background. They look nice. They look really nice.
They look good.
That would be that's the driver's side.
That's one I'm interested
That's the
in.
one, yeah, I'm pretty interested in also.
Actually, both of them.
These Sanderson headers are like patented, no gasket required. You put like some RTV around the flange and then bolt them up. You don't actually have to put a gasket in. That's what they say.
Just around the wheels.
Yeah, and so, but anyway, so let's run up here and see if these things fit. So looking at it initially, I think they'll probably fit, but we're trying to get the dipstick pulled out because what's the challenge is right now is to actually try and get them in at all. There's just so much stuff here. Dad just got the dipstick pulled out there. There's just so much stuff here, and the thing that we're worried about the most is that Z-bar down there for the clutch. So he's got the dipstick out now. I'm going to see if I can run these in from the front and see what we can do now. Alright, two things. First off, I think they're going to work. I think they're going to clear. But secondly, they're definitely not just going to fall in place, and we're going to have to put more work into it than we have time for on this video this week. Thank you guys so much for joining. I'm going to leave you with that. Make sure you come back next week and you'll see what we end up doing to get these headers in. Make sure to click that subscribe button, and when it pops up in the center of the screen, that is majorly important and is the #1 way that you can help us out without spending a single penny. If you would like to spend some money, head over to our Facebook and our Instagram. Check out that affiliate link that we have with Southwest Performance Parts. That is also helpful for us. If you click on that link and go purchase some parts from us, that also helps as well. Check them out. That's where we got this distributor. Their parts are really high quality and they're really affordable. So do that, and make sure to tune in next week. Like I said, we'll follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We're putting up stuff every day. We appreciate everyone that has subscribed and everyone that's following along and everyone that's put a comment on the videos and on stuff on social media. This has been a ton of fun and we really appreciate it. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining Shift Points.